You've been told to trust only what you can see, touch, and control. They said the universe is random, that life has no deeper meaning, that you have to fight, chase, and hold on tight or everything will fall apart. But if that were true, why does holding on so tight still leave you feeling lost? Why does trying to control everything only bring more anxiety, more fear, more doubt? Why do you still lie awake at night, wondering if everything is really going to be okay? The truth is, trust isn't blind, it's a deep knowing. A knowing that life has rhythm, that chaos has order, that the universe isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. And Buddhism holds the map, not to blind faith, but to unshakable inner peace. The kind of peace that stays with you even when nothing makes sense. The kind of trust that lets you finally let go without falling apart. Tonight, as you listen to these ancient lessons, something inside you will shift. The tightness in your chest will begin to soften. The noise in your mind will grow quiet. And in that silence, something deeper will awaken. A calm, a knowing, a trust not in the world as it appears but in the truth underneath it all. This isn't just another bedtime story. This is a journey back to the part of you that's always been safe, always been strong, always known the way. Are you ready to remember? Let's begin. You've felt it before, that heaviness in your chest when things don't go your way, that tight grip in your stomach when you try to control outcomes that refuse to obey. The world teaches us to fight, to push harder, to force results. But where has that gotten you? Tired, frustrated, worn down. There's a quiet part of you that knows there must be another way. This next part is not about giving up. It's not about becoming passive or helpless. It's about discovering a strength so deep, so grounded, it doesn't need to control anything to feel safe. That strength is surrender. And no, not the kind that feels like defeat. This is a different kind of surrender, the kind that Buddhism has whispered about for thousands of years. A surrender that sets you free, not makes you weak. Surrender, in Buddhism, is not the end of effort. It's the beginning of peace. It's choosing to loosen the grip on what you think should happen and returning to what is. Most people think surrender means you're letting life walk all over you. But that's not true surrender. That's resignation, and they are not the same. Resignation is when you stop trying because you believe nothing will ever change. It's heavy, it's hopeless. You shrink, you disconnect, you disappear into numbness. But surrender is light. It's alive. It's full of awareness. Surrender sees clearly, acknowledging the pain, the uncertainty, the fear, and still choosing to let go of control because it trusts in something deeper than the surface of events. At the heart of this path is mindfulness, being fully here, not just watching your thoughts, but learning to rest in them without being carried away by them. It's like sitting by a river and watching the current flow. You don't try to stop the water. You don't jump in and try to swim upstream. You stay grounded on the shore, present, aware, still. When you practice this kind of presence, you stop needing to bend life into your shape. You begin to feel a subtle shift, a sense that even when things are uncertain, you're not lost. Even when things are painful, you're not broken. This is what happens when you stop resisting and start witnessing. You become anchored in something unshakable. Now, this doesn't mean you don't act. Buddhism never teaches us to just sit and wait for miracles. It teaches us to act without clinging to outcomes. That's the subtle power, knowing that you can give your full heart to something and still let it go. You speak the truth without needing to be understood. You love deeply without needing it returned in a certain way. You work hard without being owned by the results. This is one of the hardest things for the modern mind to accept. We've been trained that control equals safety. But Buddhism gently exposes this illusion. Control is temporary. fragile. It cracks under pressure. True safety comes from accepting the impermanence of everything and choosing to meet it with calm awareness instead of resistance. The Buddha taught that craving is the root of suffering. Craving doesn't just mean wanting something. It's the mental tightness, the grasping, the "it must be this way or I'll fall apart." That's the craving that burns us out. Surrender, then, is the release of craving. Not the release of desire, but the release of desperate need for life to meet our expectations. You can still set goals. You can still have dreams. The difference is, you are no longer tying your peace to the outcome. You are not saying, "I'll be okay if this happens." You are saying, "I will stay present and grounded no matter what happens." That's inner power. That's the power no one can take from you. Sometimes surrender looks like stopping, like resting, like choosing not to chase what keeps wounding you. Other times, surrender is fierce. It's standing your ground without needing to win. It's walking away from something not because you've lost hope, but because your soul is no longer willing to bargain for peace. It is not the same as giving up. It's giving up the struggle while still walking your path. There is a story in the Zen tradition about a monk who was robbed. The thief took everything except the monk's clothes. As the thief was leaving, the monk stopped him and said, "Wait, you forgot the gift of the moonlight." The monk had surrendered all attachment to possessions, but not from weakness, from freedom. He had nothing to lose, and therefore nothing to fear. This doesn't mean you need to give away your things or stop caring about your life. It means you stop clinging so tightly. You stop measuring your worth by what you hold. You stop fearing change. You start trusting that even when life takes, it often gives in ways we don't yet understand. Trusting the universe is not naive. It's not pretending everything is perfect. It's seeing clearly that you are not separate from the unfolding of life. You are part of the great wave. You don't need to control it. You just need to learn how to ride it. You surrender to the moment, not because you've lost power, but because you have it. You surrender because you've seen that resistance only brings more pain. You've seen how trying to force people, situations, or timing only makes the journey heavier. You've seen that true control is learning to work with what's here, not fighting against it. This path is not easy. It requires trust. And trust isn't something you just switch on. It's built through practice, through falling, getting up, and falling again. Through letting go 100 times a day. Letting go of needing to be right. Letting go of how fast you think healing should happen. Letting go of the voice that says, "You're behind." Letting go of fixing people. Letting go of being understood perfectly. Letting go of always needing a plan. Each time you do, even in small ways, you make space. Space for grace, space for stillness, space for something wiser than your mind to guide you. This doesn't mean you won't feel pain. It means you won't be crushed by it. Because now, you don't fight it. You breathe through it. You make space for it. And in that space, the pain begins to soften. It begins to speak. It begins to heal. One of the reasons surrender is so transformative is because it brings you face to face with the part of you that always wants to escape discomfort. That part of you that says, "If I can just fix this, then I'll be okay." Buddhism doesn't try to take that voice away. It helps you hear it, understand it, and gently step back from it. You start seeing that you are not that voice. You are the awareness that hears it. From that space, you begin to feel something incredible. You begin to feel peace, no because the world changed, but because your relationship to the world changed. You're no longer at war with it. You're no longer at war with yourself. And this is where true strength comes from. Not from hardening, not from pretending you don't care, but from opening, from allowing, from walking with your fear instead of running from it. You might wonder, if I surrender, will I lose motivation? Will I stop achieving? The truth is, the opposite often happens. When you stop obsessing over outcomes, you actually free up the energy to do things with more clarity, more focus, more joy. You start to act from love instead of lack, from purpose instead of pressure. You show up more fully, not to prove yourself, but because showing up is a form of devotion. A devotion to the moment, a devotion to life, a devotion to your own growth. And even when things fall apart, even when doors close, you don't collapse. Because your peace was never built on the door staying open. It was built on knowing that when one path ends, another begins. You stop being afraid of change. You stop being afraid of uncertainty. You start to trust that even if you don't know what's next, something in you is already ready for it. This kind of surrender takes practice. It takes patience. It takes 1,000 small choices every day. Choosing to breathe instead of panic. Choosing to listen instead of argue. Choosing to rest instead of push. Choosing to trust instead of control. And little by little, these choices rewire your nervous system. They teach your body that it's safe to let go. They teach your heart that it's okay to not have all the answers. They teach your mind that it can stop fighting and start flowing. Eventually, surrender becomes second nature. Not because you don't care, but because you care differently. You care with open hands instead of clenched fists. You care with a steady heart instead of a scattered mind. You care without needing to grasp. And in that space, something beautiful happens. You begin to feel peace in the middle of the unknown. You begin to feel love even in the absence of approval. You begin to feel whole even when things are incomplete. This is the subtle art of surrender. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It doesn't chase. It simply lets go. And in letting go, it rises. Let that be your practice tonight. Not giving up, but letting go. Letting go of force. Letting go of fear. Letting go of the story that says you must have everything figured out. You don't. You just need to trust the step you're on and take it softly. Because when you surrender not from weakness, but from wisdom, everything begins to change. Not outside you, inside. And that changes everything. And as the grip of control loosens, as the breath deepens, as surrender roots itself into the soil of your awareness, something even more subtle begins to rise, an ancient understanding that your presence in the world is not isolated, that your choices, your thoughts, your speech, your silence, they ripple outward, touching everything, not as punishment, not as reward, but as conversation, a dialogue, a living interaction with the very fabric of existence itself. This is karma, and everything you've been told about it may only scratch the surface. Most people hear the word karma and think of a cosmic scoreboard. Do good, get good. Do bad, suffer. But Buddhism speaks of karma in a much deeper, more nuanced way. It's not a tally. It's not divine revenge. It's not a fixed sentence written in the sky. Karma is movement. Karma is the echo of intention. It is the language through which your inner world speaks to the outer one, and the outer responds. Your every thought has a texture. Your every word has a frequency. Your every action leaves an imprint. These are not abstract metaphors. They are energetic realities. You're in conversation with life at every moment, whether you know it or not. And karma is that conversation's current. It starts in awareness, not in what you do, but in why you do it. The root, the seed beneath the surface. When Buddhism speaks of karma, it doesn't speak just of behavior. It speaks of volition, the mind that moves before the action is born. That quiet flicker of intention is where karma begins. Say you speak kindly to someone. On the surface, it may look like compassion, but if your motive was to be liked or avoid conflict, The karmic imprint is different. It isn't about performance. It's about truth. The universe is not responding to your mask. It's responding to your essence. Karma doesn't care what you pretend to be. It listens to the purity or distortion of your motive. That's why awareness is everything. You can't change karma by manipulating appearances. You change it by transforming the mind that acts. Karma is not a rigid punishment system, but a subtle teacher. It mirrors what you are, not what you claim to be. This can be confronting, but it's also liberating, because it means you're not trapped by your past. You're not doomed by one mistake. You can purify karma the moment you see clearly and shift the way you respond. That's where the dialogue begins. You make a choice rooted in fear. The universe offers you a lesson, not to hurt you, to reveal the fear so it can be released. You act from compassion. The universe reflects that peace back in ways you never expected. It's not a vending machine. It's not a system of linear transactions. It's more like a relationship, one that deepens with every conscious step you take. This is why karma is not fatalistic. You are not a prisoner of your past. You're a participant in a living process. Even if the conditions you're in today are the fruit of past seeds, the way you meet them now plants new seeds for tomorrow. And that, Buddhism teaches, is your real power. The key is to stop seeing karma as a scorekeeper and start seeing it as a compass. It doesn't exist to punish you, it exists to guide you, to reveal where you're aligned and where you're off course. The discomfort you feel after acting out of ego, that's karma speaking. The peace that arises after a selfless act, that's karma responding. And it's not always instant. Some karmic waves take time to return. Like seeds that bloom in the right season, some karmic results need time, space, and the right conditions. That's why patience is part of the path. That's why mindfulness is essential, because you can't always trace the line between cause and effect. But you can stay committed to planting seeds of clarity, compassion, and truth. This commitment turns your life into sacred communication. You stop reacting blindly, you start responding intentionally, your presence becomes cleaner, your choices become sharper. Even your mistakes become part of your awakening, because when they're seen without denial, they stop repeating themselves. That's one of the deepest lessons karma teaches. You are never being punished, you're being shown. Shown what still hurts, shown what still drives you unconsciously, shown where you still grasp, or avoid, or escape. Not so you can feel shame, but so you can feel freedom. Freedom doesn't come from avoiding karma, it comes from understanding it. Seeing how every painful loop is not a curse, but a reflection of something unresolved. When you meet it with courage, it softens. When you deny it, it hardens. Karma is not here to trap you. It's here to wake you up, and it responds with remarkable precision. Not always in the way the ego wants, but always in the way the soul needs. Sometimes the job you lose makes space for the calling you were ignoring. Sometimes the heartbreak that feels like the end is really the doorway to a more authentic love. Karma isn't punishing you, it's aligning you, not to comfort, to truth. This alignment requires presence, because karma isn't just about big events, it's in the small habits, the tiny impulses you either follow or let go, the way you speak when no one is watching, the thoughts you feed, the energy you leave in the room after a conversation, the way you respond to silence, to conflict, to stillness. All of it shapes the texture of your path. When you begin to see karma in this light, you stop playing the victim. You stop waiting for luck to save you or fate to break you. You step into a different role, not the one who controls life, but the one who listens to it. And when you listen deeply enough, life starts to speak clearly. You begin to notice patterns. You begin to see how certain actions lead to tension, while others dissolve it. You become fluent in the language of karma. This fluency doesn't make you perfect, but it makes you awake. Awake to the impact of your energy, awake to the consequences of your choices, not out of fear, but out of care. Out of devotion to the kind of world you're helping to shape every time you act, speak, or think. Buddhism speaks of the three doors of karma: body, speech, and mind. Each of these is a channel through which you participate in this dialogue. You don't have to be a monk or scholar to use them well. You just have to pay attention. Is your speech creating peace or separation? Is your action coming from kindness or pressure? Is your mind rooted in truth or delusion? The more you ask these questions, the more clear the dialogue becomes. You stop stumbling in the dark. You start walking in rhythm with something larger than yourself. That rhythm is not always easy, but it is always honest. And it's in that honesty that real peace begins. There's a reason karma is so misunderstood. It challenges the ego. It removes the illusion that life is random, that we're powerless, that things just happen to us. But once you start to see clearly, it's impossible to unsee. You start to feel the feedback loop. You notice how certain thoughts drain your energy while others restore it. You witness how resentment poisons connection, how forgiveness releases the tightness you didn't even know you were carrying. These are karmic moments, and they are happening all the time. This is why practice matters, not for perfection, but for refinement. The more you practice presence, the more sensitive you become. You don't need to wait for karma to knock you down to listen. You start listening now, with care, with humility, with love. Because love is karma too. Real love, not attachment, not control, but the kind of love that gives freely, listens deeply, and holds space without expectation. When your actions begin to rise from that place, karma shifts. Your life softens. You start to meet people who reflect your own growth. You find yourself in spaces that nourish you. Not because you manipulated life, but because you stopped resisting its natural flow. There's no shortcut to this, no secret formula, just presence, just honesty, just the courage to look at your life not as a random collection of events, but as a mirror. Every experience, a message. Every relationship, a lesson. Every challenge, an invitation. Some people hear this and feel overwhelmed, as if karma means every little thing will come back to haunt them. But that's not how it works. Karma isn't trying to punish your ignorance, it's offering you chances to grow out of it. It's the engine of evolution. It gives you exactly what's needed, not to shame you, but to shape you. That's why kindness matters, integrity matters, stillness matters. Because what you put into the world doesn't disappear. It echoes, it returns. And not always in the way you expect, but always in the way you need. That's the hidden beauty of karma. It's intelligent, it's intimate, and it's always inviting you back to balance, back to presence, back to truth. And so the practice continues, not to escape karma, but to participate in it fully, to live in a way that leaves soft footprints, to speak in a way that clears the air, to think in a way that uplifts, even when no one is listening, because someone is always listening. The universe hears what's behind your words. It hears what you won't say out loud. It reads the space between your actions, and it responds not to punish you, but to remind you. Remind you of who you really are beneath the patterns, beneath the ego, beneath the fear. Karma is not about being perfect. It's about being real, being aware, being responsible, no in a heavy, moralistic way, but in a sacred, empowering one. You are not here to chase approval. You are not here to manipulate outcomes. You are here to walk with awareness, to speak with integrity, to act with compassion, to live as if the universe is not outside of you, but inside you responding to every vibration you release, because it is. And once you know that, once you feel that, you can't live unconsciously anymore. You begin to choose with care. You begin to move with intention. You begin to trust that what you give, you live. This is karma. Not superstition, not fear, not punishment, but relationship, sacred, ongoing, alive. So the conversation never ends. Every thought you release, every action you take, every moment of clarity or confusion, it all echoes. You're always speaking to the universe, and it's always responding. But now another question begins to rise. If karma flows from intention and everything is in constant motion, what is it all built on? What lies beneath the shifting patterns, the changing forms, the stories and the roles? What remains when you peel back all identities, all attachments, all expectations? At the heart of Buddhist understanding is a truth so radical it undoes everything the mind holds on to. It doesn't give you something new to grasp. It invites you to see that nothing can be grasped at all. This is the teaching of shunyata, emptiness. Emptiness is not nothingness. It is not absence. It is not a void in the negative sense. It is spaciousness. It is openness. It is the lack of fixed, independent existence in all things. It is the realization that nothing exists in isolation. No self, no object, no event arises on its own. Everything arises in dependence on countless other causes and conditions. And this changes everything. Because when you truly see this, not just intellectually, but as a living truth, you stop clinging. You stop demanding permanence in a world that is built on change. You stop trying to build your sense of self on things that cannot hold the weight of identity. You loosen the grip on the idea of mine and me, and you begin to relax into something far more honest, flow. Understanding emptiness doesn't make you cold or detached. It makes you clear. Clear that your suffering comes not from impermanence, but from wanting things to be permanent, from treating the temporary as final, from grasping at shadows and wondering why your hands stay empty. But when you stop grasping, you begin to trust. Not because everything feels safe or predictable, but because you realize you were never in control to begin with. You realize that the unknown is not your enemy. The unknown is the nature of everything. And the more you resist it, the more it hurts. Emptiness reveals the space in which life unfolds. It's the silence between thoughts, the stillness behind movement, the open sky in which clouds appear and vanish. When you rest in this space, you stop fearing the next moment. You stop needing to hold on to the last one. You open. This openness is not passive. It's deeply alive. Emptiness allows full engagement with the present because you are no longer distorting it through attachment. You see clearly. You respond directly. You no longer need life to confirm your identity, so you are free to meet it as it is. And yet, the mind struggles with this. It wants something solid, something to hold. It wants a clear boundary between self and other, good and bad, success and failure. But Shunyata reveals that these divisions are constructions useful sometimes, but ultimately empty of inherent meaning. Even your sense of I is a process, not a fixed point. What you call you is a flow of sensations, perceptions, thoughts, emotions, all interdependent, all conditioned. There's nothing in you that stands alone, untouched by the rest of the world. And that's not depressing, that's liberating, because it means you're not trapped. You're not frozen in some permanent identity. You can change, you can adapt, you can release the stories that no longer serve you. This is where cosmic trust begins to take root, not in certainty, but in spaciousness, in knowing that your value doesn't come from what you can hold on to, but from the awareness that holds everything. That awareness is not empty in a bleak sense. It is full of potential, full of wisdom, full of peace. When you let go of rigid definitions, you begin to see beyond appearances. You see how the person who hurt you was acting from their own conditioned patterns. You see how your own fear was never personal, it was a ripple in the sea of causes. This doesn't make you passive or naive, it makes you compassionate, because now you're not reacting to surface-level triggers. You're responding from a deeper understanding. And that response has clarity. It has balance. It no longer clings to outcome. It no longer spirals in fear. Because in the light of emptiness, even fear is seen for what it is: a thought, a wave, a passing condition. It arises, it fades. It's not the truth of who you are. So much of our pain comes from holding too tightly, holding on to roles, status, relationships, ideas. We attach meaning to things and then suffer when they shift. Emptiness invites you to hold everything more gently, to care deeply but without possession, to love fully but without needing to own. And when loss comes, as it always does, you grieve, but you don't collapse. You hurt, but you don't lose yourself, because you've stopped confusing impermanent things with your permanent nature. You've stopped asking the world to stay still so you can feel secure. That is the great shift, from building security on fixed things to building trust in the openness itself, from fearing the unknown to meeting it with calm curiosity, from seeking something solid to resting in the vastness of what is. This shift doesn't happen all at once, it unfolds in layers. At first, emptiness can feel strange, even scary. It's the undoing of everything the ego relies on. But with practice, you begin to feel its truth. You begin to relax into it. And what once felt like losing ground begins to feel like finding space. That space is sacred. It's what allows you to respond instead of react, to move without clinging, to change without fear. It's what allows creativity, flexibility, joy. It's what makes compassion possible. Because you're no longer locked in the prison of me versus you. You see the shared emptiness beneath all forms, and in that you find connection not through similarity, but through shared source. Even time softens in the light of shunyata. The past is no longer a trap. The future is no longer a threat. What matters is how you meet this moment, with this breath, in this awareness. And in this space, trust grows. Not trust in outcomes, but trust in presence, trust in the process, trust in life as it unfolds, even when you don't understand it. And this trust is not belief. It's not built on hope or expectation. It's built on direct seeing. You see that everything changes, that everything arises in dependence, that everything is empty of solidity and therefore open to transformation. This kind of vision doesn't make you detached from life. It connects you more deeply to it, because you're no longer trying to control the river. You're swimming in it. You're moving with the current instead of resisting it. You're learning to float in the unknown. In this way, emptiness isn't a lack. It's the ground of being, the space in which life happens. And when you trust that space, you stop needing to know everything. You stop fearing what's next. You trust not because you have a map, but because you know how to walk without one. This knowing is embodied. It shows up in how you speak, how you move, how you respond to the unexpected. You're less reactive, less tense, more present, more attuned. You no longer need to fill the silence. You no longer need to explain everything. You no longer feel the same panic when plans fall apart. You see clearly. Plans are empty. Control is empty. Identity is empty. Not in a nihilistic sense, but in a freeing one. Free to change. Free to let go. Free to respond with care rather than fear. Even purpose becomes clearer in emptiness. Not as a fixed goal, but as a living responsiveness. You don't need to define your life in rigid terms. You simply live with presence and care, knowing that the meaning is not in what you hold, but in how you hold it. And that's the final beauty of Shunyata. It teaches you how to live without armor, how to meet life as it is, without filters, without resistance, how to stay open even when things fall apart, how to love without attachment, how to act without ego, how to rest in the fullness of this empty, ever-changing moment. This is what freedom looks like. Not the absence of problems, but the absence of clinging. Not the promise of certainty, but the presence of trust. And in that trust, something profound unfolds. Not a belief, not a dogma, but a quiet, steady knowing that everything you need is already here in the space between thoughts, in the breath you're taking now, in the vast silence of your own awareness. That is Shunyata, and it is not far away. It is what's here when you stop reaching, when you stop naming, when you stop turning away from the truth that everything is empty, and in that, emptiness free. So breathe. Let go again. Let go not to fall, but to rise. Because the universe doesn't need to be controlled. It needs to be trusted. And that trust begins in the space you're standing in right now. And once you've begun to trust the openness, the empty nature of all things, you start to sense a deeper rhythm behind it all. Not randomness, not chaos, but pattern, interdependence. A quiet order that doesn't always make sense to the thinking mind, but speaks clearly to the still one. You begin to realize that nothing arises alone. Nothing happens without a cause. And nothing, not even your own suffering, exists in isolation. This is the next unfolding. This is the truth of dependent origination. In Buddhism, this principle reveals that everything arises based on conditions. Not just the obvious ones, but layers upon layers of subtle influences that stretch far beyond what we can directly perceive. This isn't philosophy for philosophy's sake. It's a mirror showing you how your life, your reactions, your emotions, and your habits are not standalone events. They are linked, conditioned, connected. You weren't born into a vacuum. Your thoughts come from somewhere. Your habits were shaped. The fears you hold now didn't appear out of thin air. They were formed by past experiences, words spoken, environments lived in, patterns repeated until they felt like identity. But when you see that nothing exists independently, you begin to loosen the narrative that says, "This is just who I am." Because if everything depends on causes, then change is always possible. If your pain is conditioned, it can be unconditioned. If your anger has roots, those roots can be seen and released. This view gives you more than hope. It gives you a path. Dependent origination teaches that we are not isolated islands. We are strands in an infinite web, every thread affecting the others. Your mood affects your thoughts. Your diet affects your energy. Your breath affects your nervous system. Your presence affects the people around you. Nothing stands apart. And the more deeply you understand this, the more carefully, compassionately, and wisely you begin to live. When something goes wrong, the mind loves to search for one cause, one person to blame, one mistake to regret. But life doesn't work like that. There are no single-threaded problems. There are no standalone emotions. Every moment is a result of a constellation of influences, some seen, some not. When you accept this, you stop trying to control every detail. You stop obsessing over one failure or one decision. You begin to trust the complexity, the unfolding, the bigger picture. And that trust doesn't make you passive, it makes you more awake. You start to look deeper. If someone lashes out at you, you look beyond the surface. You see the layers, fear, conditioning, maybe even the pain they've inherited from others. You don't excuse harm, but you stop seeing it as personal. You stop reducing people to their worst moments. You remember that they too are shaped by causes, and that creates space for compassion. In your own life, this view changes everything. Let's say you're feeling anxious. Instead of labeling it a flaw, you trace its causes. Maybe it's connected to lack of rest, or too much caffeine, or unresolved grief, or a thought pattern from years ago. You gently untangle the web, not with judgment, but with curiosity. You stop treating your mind like a mystery or a threat. You begin to see it as a system, a beautiful, complex one that you can understand more fully over time. This understanding brings freedom, not because you can control every condition, but because you stop feeling powerless in front of them. You realize that small shifts matter, that planting one seed of mindfulness today affects how you respond tomorrow, that taking care of your body affects the clarity of your mind, that one compassionate choice ripples through your relationships in ways you may never fully see, but still shape everything. The law of dependent origination also opens your eyes to impermanence in a practical way. Because if things arise due to causes, and those causes change, then what has arisen will also pass. No feeling lasts forever. No state of mind is final. Everything flows, everything evolves. And if you trust this, you stop clinging so tightly. You hold pain with more spaciousness, because you know it's moving. You hold joy with gratitude, because you know it's part of a wave. This does not mean you become indifferent. You care more deeply, but your care becomes wiser. You start to focus on conditions, not just results. Instead of obsessing over whether you feel peaceful right now, you ask, what habits support peace? What thoughts disrupt it? What relationships nurture it? You begin to live more like a gardener tending to the soil, the water, the light, not forcing the flower, but creating space for it to bloom. And you begin to see others differently. You understand that their behavior too is conditioned, that their struggles come from somewhere, that judgment is rarely helpful, and curiosity often is. This softens your reactions. It expands your patience. It doesn't make you naive, it makes you grounded in wisdom. Because dependent origination doesn't just explain suffering, it also explains healing. It tells you that no transformation happens in a vacuum. Healing happens in relationships, in safe environments, in new patterns built slowly over time. This is why community matters. This is why your surroundings matter. You start to choose more carefully, not out of fear, but because you know you're always being shaped. The concept also dismantles the illusion of control in a powerful way. Not to leave you helpless, but to set you free from the obsession with controlling what is beyond your reach. You begin to focus on what is within your reach, your actions, your attention, your speech, your inner response. You let go of needing to predict every outcome. You shift your energy to showing up well in this moment, knowing that this moment contributes to what comes next. And that brings peace, because the anxiety of trying to manage the future begins to ease. You begin to understand that the future is not a blank canvas you can control. It's a living field shaped by what you water today. So you water it wisely. You bring presence into your choices. You align your energy with the values that matter. Not perfectly, but steadily. The more deeply you live this, the more reverence you feel for the unseen, for the slow, for the complexity behind every moment. You begin to trust the process, even when you can't see all the threads. You begin to trust that your efforts, though small, are never wasted, because even the smallest cause contributes to change. This shift also helps you release guilt, because you stop believing you were supposed to know everything. You stop beating yourself up for what you didn't understand at the time. You see clearly, you were shaped too, and now that you know more, you do better. That's enough. That's the path, and it's unfolding one condition at a time. This teaching invites humility too, because no one stands alone. No success is isolated, no failure is total. You begin to see how everything good in your life has been supported by teachers, by kindness, by sacrifices you may never know. And this makes you grateful. It makes you want to give back, to become a positive condition in someone else's life. That's the power of dependent origination. It builds a sense of responsibility, but not one rooted in fear, one rooted in care, in presence, in the understanding that what you do matters, even if the results take time, even if you never see them fully bloom. It's a call to live intentionally, to stop asking, will this fix everything? And start asking, is this one step in the direction of truth, compassion, or wisdom? You no longer demand immediate results. You trust the process. You become more patient with yourself and others. This understanding also helps dissolve resentment, because you see how people are caught in their own conditioned loops. It doesn't excuse harm, but it helps you understand why people repeat pain. And in that understanding, forgiveness becomes more possible. Not forgetting, but letting go of the illusion that it was ever personal. You also start to see your own conditioning more clearly. The stories you inherited, the assumptions you've never questioned. And instead of feeling shame, you feel empowered because now you can shift them. Not overnight, but slowly. Through new choices, through deeper awareness, through better questions. Even meditation becomes clearer in this light. You stop trying to force silence. You see that calm arises from certain conditions: slower breath, relaxed body, focused attention. You stop fighting the noise and start tending to the ground. And over time, stillness arises not as a reward, but as a natural response to the space you've made. You learn to trust cause and effect not as a dogma, but as a deep rhythm of life. And this trust changes your relationship to uncertainty. You stop needing to control outcomes. You begin to focus on your side of the web. You take care of your thread, and you trust that doing so supports the whole. There's beauty in this. There's peace. Because even when life feels chaotic, you begin to sense the deeper weave. The invisible threads connecting your pain to your healing, your confusion to your growth, your isolation to your eventual connection. You stop seeing your life as a collection of broken pieces. You start seeing it as a tapestry still being woven. Every choice matters. Every small shift in thought, every breath taken with awareness, every kind word, it all ripples. So when life feels overwhelming, you don't freeze. You return to the basics. You ask, what is one condition I can change right now? Can I soften my breath? Can I speak more gently? Can I choose a thought that aligns with care? These aren't small things. They are the path itself. Because in a world built on interdependence, there are no neutral moments. Everything you do is part of something larger. And when you remember this, not just as theory, but as lived experience, you walk differently, you speak more mindfully, you live more fully. Not out of pressure, out of reverence, out of trust in the web, the one you're already part of, the one that's holding you, even now. And the more you sense the web, that endless flow of causes, conditions, choices, and consequences, the more one question begins to echo beneath it all. Who is the one experiencing this? The thoughts, the reactions, the roles, the feelings, they come and go, shift and change, rise and fade. But if everything is interdependent, constantly shaped by what surrounds it, then what is this thing we call me? This is where the teaching goes deeper, into the heart of self, into the illusion that something fixed, permanent and separate sits at the center of your experience, into the Buddhist insight that there is no self, and that understanding this is not a loss, but a profound freedom, one that builds a kind of faith that no outer certainty can ever give. To hear that there is no self can be unsettling at first. The ego, so used to building and defending identity, tightens in confusion. But Buddhism does not teach that you don't exist. It teaches that the self you take to be solid is, in fact, a construction assembled over time through memory, habit, desire, fear, and belief. It feels real. It feels central. But when examined closely, it begins to fall apart. Thought arises, then it passes. A mood appears, then shifts. The body changes year by year. What you believe at 20 may not hold at 40. What you cling to today may dissolve tomorrow. So who are you beneath all that movement? What remains when the labels drop away? The answer, in Buddhist thought, is not a hidden core or secret soul. It is awareness itself, clear, boundless, open, and unowned. Not a self behind experience, but a field through which experience flows. The moment you stop clinging to a fixed identity, something expansive reveals itself. And it isn't a void of meaning. It's a release of confusion. You begin to see that the self you defend, your reputation, your opinions, your story, is not the stable foundation you thought it was. It's a pattern, a reflex, a response to conditions. And while it's functional, it's not ultimate. Recognizing this doesn't erase your personality, it removes the illusion that your personality defines you. And this is where unshakable faith begins to emerge. Not the faith of blind belief, but the faith that comes when you stop placing your security in something that always changes. As long as you tie your worth to your image, you will suffer. As long as you chase meaning through roles and titles, you will remain anxious. As long as you believe you are the thinker of every thought, the controller of every feeling, the doer of every action, you will live in fear of falling short. But when you see clearly that there is no solid self to protect, you soften, you relax. The need to win, to prove, to justify begins to dissolve. You don't become passive, you become free. You begin to act, speak, and move not from a place of identity maintenance, but from a place of deep responsiveness. In that space, life flows more naturally. You no longer feel responsible for keeping an idea of yourself alive. Instead, you begin to trust the intelligence that moves through you when the ego steps aside. This is not about disappearing, it's about opening to something far more spacious than the story of me. The no-self teaching invites you to see through the illusion of control. You don't choose your thoughts before they appear. You don't pick your emotions like groceries off a shelf. They rise, they pass, they move in response to countless hidden causes. And yet, we suffer when we identify with them as if every flicker of mind defines who we are. But it doesn't. When a wave crashes on the ocean surface, the ocean doesn't become the wave. It holds it, lets it rise, lets it fall. In the same way, awareness holds thought, feeling, sensation, but is not defined by any of them. You are not the wave. You are what holds the waves without clinging. This recognition builds a deep inner trust. Not because you have answers, but because you stop asking the wrong questions. You stop asking, who am I supposed to be? And begin to rest in what is arising now. You stop trying to fix your identity and start paying attention to your experience. In that attention, the ego softens and the present moment sharpens. And in that sharpness, clarity grows. You begin to trust not in the self, but in the process. Not in a fixed identity, but in the unfolding. Not in rigid belief, but in direct awareness. And that trust becomes unshakable, because it's never tested, but because it's not built on anything that can be broken. This shift changes how you suffer. Before, pain felt personal. Now, it's just part of the flow. Before, fear meant failure. Now, it's just energy moving. Before, doubt meant you were wrong. Now, it's a doorway to deeper inquiry. You don't reject anything. You don't cling to anything. You let it come. You let it go. And in letting go, you find peace. This does not mean you stop functioning in the world. The relative self remains. You still use your name. You still pay bills. You still have conversations. But inside, something shifts. You're no longer confused about where your freedom lies. You stop looking for security and status. You stop tying happiness to approval. You begin to trust the silence more than the story. And this trust creates stability. Not the brittle kind that snaps under pressure, but the flexible kind that bends and holds. When someone disagrees with you, you don't panic. You don't need to defend an identity. When plans change, you adjust. When praise comes, you don't inflate. When criticism hits, you don't collapse. Because you are no longer the identity reacting. You are the awareness responding. This is the heart of Buddhist practice, not to build a better self, but to see through the illusion of a fixed one. And in that seeing, to rest more fully in reality. You stop seeking constant validation. You stop fearing imperfection. You start living in tune with what's real, not what the ego wants to believe. And what's real is always changing, always moving, always more than what one's self-concept can contain. So you let go, you trust, you surrender not to passivity, but to presence. You show up for your life without needing to be anyone special. And that is where true power begins. Because in truth, the ego is exhausted. It's been trying to hold everything together, your story, your value, your image. But when you see that it doesn't need to, that there's no fixed self to protect, everything gets lighter, even grief, even anger, even failure. You meet it all with curiosity instead of fear. This also changes how you connect with others. Without a rigid self to defend, you're less reactive. You listen more, you judge less. You stop projecting your unmet needs onto others. You start meeting people where they are, not where your ego needs them to be. This makes love more honest, more unconditional. You become less attached to roles. Whether someone sees you as strong or weak, right or wrong, doesn't shake your ground, because your ground is not made of image anymore. It's made of presence. And presence is not dependent on perception. That's why this teaching builds faith, because it brings you closer to truth. And truth, even when it's uncomfortable, is stable. The closer you are to it, the less you fear life, the less you fear death, because both are part of a process, not interruptions to a self. When there is no fixed self to preserve, there is no fear of losing it. And that's the root of deep spiritual confidence, not egoic pride, but quiet strength. You no longer need to feel important, you just need to be clear. You no longer need to feel certain. You just need to be present. You no longer chase meaning in the future. You live it now by being fully here. There's beauty in this, because once you release the pressure to be someone, you are free to truly see. To notice the breeze, the breath, the light, the subtle unfolding of life, as it is, not as you want it to be. You stop editing the moment, you start participating in it. And even when old habits return, as they will, you don't panic, you don't fall back into shame. You see them, you greet them, you work with them, without judgment, without identification. You treat even your egoic patterns as passing clouds, not as failures, but as conditions to be understood. This is what it means to walk the middle path, not clinging to the self, not denying experience, but resting in the awareness that holds both. That awareness doesn't belong to you. It is what you are when the mind is quiet, when the story softens, when the labels drop. It's peaceful there, not because life stops hurting, but because your relationship to pain has changed. You stop needing to escape it. You stop turning it into identity. You meet it, you hold it, And then, when it's ready, you let it go. And even if it stays, you stay with it not as the one who suffers, but as the one who sees. In the end, the no self-teaching isn't about losing yourself. It's about seeing through the layers that were never you to begin with, and in that seeing, a quiet trust begins to grow. A trust that doesn't waver when plans fall apart. A trust that doesn't need applause. A trust that doesn't collapse under change. Because now you know, you were never the wave. You were always the ocean. Still, vast, free. And as the grip of ego fades, as the story of me dissolves into the stillness of awareness, something begins to surface, something deeper than thought, quieter than emotion, clearer than analysis. A presence that doesn't argue, a knowing that doesn't need proof. Once the mind stops shouting and the identity stops reaching, a space opens. And in that space, something profound happens, not with noise, but with silence. This is the quiet invitation of noble silence note, the absence of sound, but the fullness of stillness. A silence that does not disconnect you from the world, but connects you to it in a more honest way. One that doesn't suppress expression, but reveals what is true beneath the layers of noise. This kind of silence isn't empty, it's full of clarity, depth, and listening. In Buddhist tradition, noble silence isn't about muting the voice, it's about quieting the noise that clouds inner perception. The teachings describe it not just as a lack of talking, but as a presence so complete it doesn't need to speak. It is the silence that comes not from force, but from understanding. A silence chosen, not imposed. This silence has a purpose. It is not a retreat from life, but a deeper entry into it. By stepping back from habitual talking, explaining, defending, and interpreting, you make room to hear what usually gets buried. The body speaks, the emotions surface. The deeper knowing that words cannot carry begins to rise. You begin to hear your life in a new way, not as a story being told, but as a living field of experience unfolding. Noble silence creates the conditions for this kind of hearing. In ordinary life, most of what we say is reactive. We fill space out of habit, anxiety, or discomfort. We speak to be seen, to be right, to be safe. But silence slows that down. It pauses the performance. It allows you to observe what is driving your need to speak. You begin to see which words come from clarity and which come from fear. In the absence of noise, thoughts don't disappear, but your relationship to them changes. You begin to notice their patterns. You notice how quickly the mind jumps to self-reference, how often it replays the past, how much it needs to interpret, justify, plan, or narrate. Silence brings these tendencies to light, not to shame them, but to see them for what they are: habits, not truths. This awareness brings space. Space to choose, space to listen, and not just to others, but to yourself. In silence, intuitive knowing becomes more accessible, no because it wasn't there before, but because now there's less interference. You begin to distinguish the voice of habit from the voice of insight. One is loud, urgent, restless. The other is quiet, stable, steady. And the more you listen, the more clearly you hear. The silence also brings you closer to the present. Without the distraction of speech, you start to experience life directly. You feel the breath more fully. You notice the tension in your body. You see the details of your surroundings with sharper attention. Presence is no longer a concept, it becomes your natural state when the noise fades. Trust begins to deepen here, not because you've figured things out, but because you've learned to be with what is. Silence is the doorway to that kind of trust, the kind that doesn't demand answers, but allows space for answers to arise on their own. You stop forcing clarity. You allow it. And when it comes, it's more stable because it's rooted in direct perception, not in mental noise. Noble silence is also a powerful teacher in relationships. It reveals how much of our connection is built on assumptions, projections, and the need to fill space. When you are silent with someone, not in avoidance, but in presence, something shifts. A deeper layer of connection opens. You begin to listen, not to respond, but to understand. You stop rehearsing what to say next. You start receiving what is actually being said. This changes the quality of your presence. You become more grounded. People feel safer around you, not because you have the right words, but because your silence is not empty. It is awake. It is kind. It makes space for others to show up without needing to perform. Silence also strengthens discernment. You begin to sense which words need to be spoken and which do not. You stop wasting energy on explaining what doesn't need defending. You stop speaking to avoid discomfort. You start to value truth over approval. And when you do speak, your words carry weight not because they are loud, but because they are chosen. In noble silence, you learn the art of restraint not as suppression, but as power. You see that not every emotion needs to be voiced to be valid, that not every insight needs to be shared to be real, that not every opinion needs to be heard to matter. Silence teaches humility. It teaches timing. It teaches you to value presence over performance. In moments of deep silence, something else becomes clear. Your connection to the universe doesn't require constant thinking. It doesn't require explanation. It doesn't need words to be real. It is felt, known, trusted. This is where inner guidance speaks not through noise, but through clarity, not in the voice of the mind, but in the stillness behind it. This kind of trust cannot be taught through argument or logic. It grows through presence, through being with silence long enough to recognize it as a teacher, not a threat. Through choosing stillness over distraction, even when it's uncomfortable, because that discomfort is the edge of transformation. It's where the surface noise breaks and something deeper can rise. And what rises is often not what you expected. It might be old emotion, unprocessed grief, fear that had been hiding under the busy surface. Silence doesn't suppress these things, it invites them up. And when met with care, they begin to release, not through solving, but through seeing. This is why silence is not escape. It's confrontation, the gentle kind, the honest kind, the kind that heals by revealing what has been ignored, the kind that builds trust not by providing answers, but by removing the noise that keeps you from hearing them. Silence is also the space where you learn to witness thought without becoming it. Without speech to reinforce identity, the ego has less to stand on. Its opinions have nowhere to land. Its stories have no audience. You begin to see that much of what you think you need to say was only ever meant to protect a version of yourself that never really existed. In that seeing, the ego loosens. And what takes its place is not a blank void but presence, awareness, the kind that doesn't need to narrate life to feel alive, the kind that knows truth without needing to explain it. This practice doesn't need to be extreme. You don't have to disappear into the mountains or renounce all speech. You can begin right where you are, a few minutes a day, a morning without talking, a walk in silence, a meal without distraction. These moments matter. They change how you relate to yourself and to the world. Over time, silence stops being awkward. It becomes a friend, a refuge, a reminder. When things feel chaotic, silence brings you home. When the mind races, silence slows the spin. When life feels loud, silence helps you hear again not just your own needs, but the pulse of something greater moving through everything. This is how you begin to hear the universe, not through signs in the sky or answers written in stone, but through subtle knowing that arises when you're quiet enough to receive it. When you stop filling the space, you discover that the space is not empty. It is full of guidance, of clarity, of wisdom. You begin to trust this. You begin to live by it. You make decisions not from panic, but from inner alignment. You say yes not out of obligation, but from inner clarity. You say no without guilt. You stop needing to explain your truth because you are no longer disconnected from it. And when you do speak, your words carry that silence with them. They are fewer, more precise, more honest, less reactive, more kind, because they are not trying to cover silence, but to express what it revealed. The more you practice noble silence, the more natural it becomes. You begin to crave it, not as escape, but as alignment. You stop needing to run from your inner world. You start resting in it. And from that rest, a new kind of movement arises, not driven by restlessness, but guided by stillness. You discover that silence is not the opposite of action, it is the source of wise action. It is where true response is born, where clarity replaces confusion, where knowing replaces doubt, where connection replaces performance. This is the quiet power of noble silence. It does not demand attention, it does not shout, it does not seek credit, but it changes everything. Not by doing more, but by allowing more. Not by controlling the moment, but by entering it fully. And in that fullness, you begin to hear not just your own thoughts, but the quiet rhythm of something far beyond you, a presence that has always been there, waiting to be heard. In silence, you remember. And in remembering, you trust. The deeper you go into silence, the more clearly you begin to feel what words often fail to express. Underneath all the noise, beneath every question, past every layer of confusion, what remains is tenderness. Not weakness, but a raw, open presence that notices suffering and does not turn away. Silence doesn't just connect you to your own truth. It softens the boundary between yourself and the rest of the world. You start to sense that your pain is not separate from anyone else's, that your healing is tied to theirs. And from this recognition, something powerful begins to take shape, the will to serve, to awaken not only for yourself, but for all beings. This is the heart of the Bodhisattva path. In Mahayana Buddhism, the Bodhisattva is not a perfect person or a distant ideal. It is a commitment, a direction, a vow made again and again, not out of obligation, but out of deep compassion. The vow says, I will not abandon the world. I will awaken fully, and I will keep returning for others, even if it takes lifetimes. These are not just poetic words. They are a radical act of trust. When you take these vows, even silently within your own heart, you are declaring something profound, that liberation is not an individual escape, but a shared journey. That freedom is not real unless it includes everyone. That the deepest purpose is not self-improvement, but boundless care. This vow shifts everything. It anchors your path in something bigger than your own comfort. It gives meaning to difficulty. It reframes struggle. When pain arises, you no longer ask only how to escape it. You ask how to use it, how to understand it, how to transform it, and how to help others through it. Your suffering stops being personal. It becomes part of your training, part of your capacity to understand the pain of others without turning away. The Bodhisattva doesn't wait to be perfect. That's not the point. The vow is made in the middle of the mess, in the face of doubt, in the presence of fear. The vow is what carries you through those states. It holds you when your own motivation falters. It reminds you that the path is not about feeling good all the time. It's about staying present, open, and committed, even when it's hard. Taking this vow means you start to live from a different center. Instead of constantly asking, "What do I need?" you begin to ask, "What is needed?" You start listening more deeply not only to your own heart, but to the suffering around you. And that listening becomes action. It becomes presence. It becomes a willingness to keep going even when it's uncomfortable, because something in you has seen that compassion is more powerful than fear. And here's the most beautiful part. The more you give yourself to this vow, the more supported you feel. Not by certainty or control, but by a deeper current. A sense that you are not alone, that the universe itself is rooted in compassion, not as sentiment, but as truth. You begin to trust this not as belief, but as something you feel in your bones. A knowing that grows as you live the vow, not just think about it. This trust becomes your strength. When the path feels unclear, when setbacks come, when emotions feel overwhelming, you return to the vow. You don't need a map. You have direction. You have intention. You have a reason to take the next step. And that next step is always here, always possible, always sacred. The Bodhisattva vow is also practical. It teaches you how to move through a world that is full of suffering without becoming hardened or hopeless. It doesn't ask you to fix everything. It asks you to respond, to keep your heart open even when it would be easier to shut down, to keep showing up, not because you're winning, but because others are hurting. That kind of commitment grows trust not only in your own strength, but in the goodness of the path itself, in the possibility of transformation, in the truth that compassion is not weakness, but wisdom in motion. When you act from compassion, you don't just reduce suffering, you become less entangled in your own. You become lighter, freer, more aligned with something larger than yourself. This is not about self-sacrifice, it's about self-expansion. When you hold the vow, you don't disappear. You become more real. You begin to see yourself as part of the whole. And in that, a deep sense of purpose arises. Not the kind that depends on praise or results, but the kind that holds steady in all conditions. You also begin to see that compassion is not always soft. Sometimes it's fierce. Sometimes it's boundary setting. Sometimes it's speaking hard truths. But when it's rooted in the vow, it's always free of self-centeredness. You're not acting to be right or to be seen. You're acting because the vow asks, how can I reduce harm? How can I serve awakening? This mindset shapes everything. It shapes how you speak, how you listen, how you spend your time. You start to let go of what doesn't serve that deeper intention. You no longer need everything to be perfect before you help others. You no longer wait until you're fully healed to show up. You start from where you are, with what you have, again and again. And each time you return to the vow, something inside stabilizes. The fluctuations of the ego lose their grip. You trust the vow more than you trust your moods. You trust compassion more than you trust your fears. This is not about suppressing your needs. It's about recognizing that your deepest need is to live in alignment with your heart, and that alignment includes the whole world. The Bodhisattva path also expands your view of time. You stop needing immediate results. You stop needing people to change on your timeline. You stop demanding that your impact be visible. You trust that seeds are being planted. You trust that presence matters, even when it doesn't feel productive. You begin to embody patience not as waiting, but as staying true. This kind of trust is unshakable because it's not based on outcomes, it's based on intention. You know that you're moving in the direction of truth, and that's enough. You don't control the results. You don't need to. You've handed yourself over to something more enduring than short-term reward. And this changes your relationship to fear. You may still feel it, but it doesn't define you. It becomes something you carry, not something that stops you, because the vow is stronger than fear. The vow gives your courage a reason. It reminds you that the point is not to avoid difficulty. The point is to meet difficulty with wisdom and love. You begin to see that the path is not about overcoming others or even yourself. It's about remembering who you really are beneath the defenses. beneath the patterns, beneath the doubt. You are not just a person trying to get by. You are a being committed to awakening for everyone. And that commitment does not go unnoticed. The universe begins to reflect it back, not always in obvious ways, but in subtle support. A sense of being carried, a clarity that wasn't there before, a strength that rises when you thought you had none left. These are the signs that the vow is alive, that you're not walking alone. The path of the Bodhisattva is vast. There is no end to compassion, no finish line, no checklist. But that's what makes it so powerful. It asks for your whole life not as perfection, but as offering. Not as performance, but as presence. You don't need to be anyone special. You just need to care deeply and act accordingly. Over time, the vow becomes less about words and more about being. You no longer have to remind yourself what matters. You embody it. And that embodiment becomes a light for others, not because you're trying to lead, but because people feel something steady in you, something trustworthy, something real. This is how the vow anchors your trust, not in certainty, but in connection, not in control, but in compassion. You begin to see the whole world as part of your path. Every being, every moment, every breath becomes an opportunity to wake up and to help others wake up too. And this brings joy, not the fleeting kind, but the deep joy of living in alignment, of knowing that your life is not separate from the whole, that your healing supports the healing of others, that your presence matters even when no one sees it, that your vow lives in everything you do. This is not a burden, it is a blessing, a reminder that you are not here only for yourself. You are here as part of something larger, and that something is woven through with compassion. You can feel it when you pause, when you breathe, when you remember. And when you do, you return to the vow again, quietly, fully, willingly. And that is enough. And when you make the vow to walk the path not just for yourself, but for all beings, something fundamental shifts inside. You begin to feel it not as an idea, but as truth. You are not separate. Your suffering is not just yours. Your healing reaches beyond your skin. Every act of care, every moment of mindfulness touches a thread in a much larger fabric. You are already connected. And this connection is not poetic. It is reality. One that Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh called into being. This word, gently offered and endlessly deep, carries a simple but life-altering truth. Nothing exists by itself. Everything depends on everything else. A flower cannot grow without the rain, the soil, the sun, the gardener, and the centuries of life that made those elements possible. A person cannot breathe without trees, cannot speak without language, cannot live without others who walk beside them, near or far. To be is to interbe. Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings on interbeing are not abstract. They are deeply practical and immediately personal. They offer a way to experience life, not through the illusion of isolation, but through the lens of belonging. Not the kind of belonging that requires approval or fitting in, but the kind that simply is. You belong because you exist, and you exist through others. When you see this clearly, fear begins to soften. Much of the fear that lives in the human heart comes from the belief that we are alone, that our pain is ours alone to carry, that our joy is fleeting because it ends with us, that our mistakes cut us off from love. Interbeing dissolves this illusion. It shows that your joy is part of a shared field, that your pain echoes through generations, not to burden you, but to be seen, felt, and transformed. That your existence is never separate, even when you feel lonely. This does not mean we lose ourselves in others. It means we see ourselves more clearly because of others. Thich Nhat Hanh often spoke about how we cannot remove a sheet of paper from the tree, the sun, the logger, or even the clouds. The paper holds all of them. In the same way, you hold your parents, your teachers, your friends, your ancestors, and even the strangers who have touched your life unknowingly. When you begin to see through this lens, your sense of identity becomes less rigid. You stop needing to define yourself so sharply. You stop clinging to separation as protection. Instead, you soften into connection, not in theory, but in the way you breathe, the way you speak, the way you listen. You begin to understand that your words affect not only the person you speak to, but the entire atmosphere of your world. Thich Nhat Hanh invited people to experience this by slowing down, by walking gently, by eating with awareness, by speaking with intention. These practices are not rituals for their own sake. They are doorways. When you eat a piece of fruit with full attention, you taste not just the sweetness, but the earth, the rain, the sun, the hands that picked it. You taste the world in a single bite. And in that awareness, gratitude arises not forced, but natural. This awareness of interbeing also deepens responsibility, not out of guilt, but out of love. When you realize that your well-being depends on the well-being of others, you care differently. You don't act only for yourself. You begin to see that healing your own heart helps soften the hearts of others, that being patient with yourself allows you to be more patient with the world, that when you speak with kindness, you shift the air others breathe. Interbeing teaches that transformation is not linear or limited to one person at a time. It ripples. Every moment of presence, every act of compassion is part of a larger movement. This gives meaning to even the smallest action: a smile, a pause, a breath taken instead of a reaction. These things are not small. They are threads in the tapestry of life. They matter more than we know. The beauty of this view is that it makes space for everything. You don't have to deny your suffering to be part of the whole. You don't have to hide your imperfections. Interbeing includes the broken pieces. It includes the shadow. It includes the parts of you that still feel cut off, because those parts too are shaped by relationships, by past pain, by unmet needs, by forgotten kindnesses. Nothing is outside the web. And this brings humility. You stop assuming you know what others are carrying. You stop judging so quickly. You begin to ask different questions, not "What's wrong with them?" but "What are they connected to that I cannot see?" You begin to listen for what is unspoken. You begin to honor the complexity of every being you meet. Interbeing also helps you face difficulty without despair, because even when the world seems dark, when violence, hatred, or division dominate the news, you remember that this is not the whole story. There are still countless unseen acts of care, of courage, of resilience. The good is not louder, but it is always present. It lives in the web, in the daily choices of millions, in the quiet prayers, in the meals shared, in the people who do what's right when no one is watching. Thich Nhat Hanh's life was a living example of this. A monk, a poet, a peace activist, worked tirelessly for justice, but always from a place of deep stillness. He never separated inner peace from outer action. For him, mindfulness was not a private escape, it was a way of walking through the world in harmony with all life. To breathe in awareness was to connect with the breath of the earth. To speak with care was to water seeds of trust in others. This is how interbeing becomes more than a philosophy. It becomes your way of being. You don't need to understand it all intellectually. You live it. You sense it. You begin to feel that your heartbeat is part of something larger, that your healing is the earth healing, that your laughter is the sky clearing, that your tears are part of the river flowing toward wholeness. And when you stumble, as you will, this view offers support. You are not alone in your confusion. Others have walked this path. Others are walking it now. You can lean on their presence, their wisdom, their compassion even if they are not physically beside you. The bodhisattvas, the ancestors, the community of the awakened, visible and invisible, are always here. The web holds you, even when you forget. You begin to live with more ease. Not because life is easy, but because you stop fighting it alone. You recognize the truth that your suffering is not separate, and therefore your healing is not separate either. You find the courage to ask for help, to offer help, to forgive, to rest, because all of it affects the whole. Even silence becomes part of the connection. You don't always need words to belong. You don't always need explanation to feel understood. Sometimes just being present is enough. Sometimes just walking together in quiet awareness says more than any conversation. Sometimes just being still with someone in their pain is the deepest act of love. This view also transforms how you see nature. You no longer relate to the earth as something separate to be used, but as part of your own body. The trees breathe out what you breathe in. The water you drink moves through everything that lives. You begin to care for the planet not because you should, but because it is part of you. Its well-being is your well-being. You also begin to relate to time differently. The past is not distant. The future is not out of reach. Every moment contains echoes of what came before and seeds of what will come next. Your presence now changes what unfolds later. Your healing ripples both backward and forward. Interbeing transcends time. It reminds you that your life is part of a continuum, that the love you offer now may reach someone generations from now. This creates trust. Trust not in quick fixes or certainty, but in the quiet power of presence. Trust that you are not separate from the intelligence of life. Trust that even when you don't know what to do, being present is enough. Trust that every small act of care helps mend the web. This doesn't make you naive, it makes you wise, because you see the suffering more clearly and you don't turn away. You stay, you breathe, you do what you can from where you are, and that is enough. You don't have to save the world, you just have to remember that you are never acting alone. Every choice you make to come back to presence, to compassion, to truth strengthens the web. It supports the healing of others. It makes space for connection to grow. And in that space, you are no longer lost. You are part of the movement. You are part of the breath. You are part of the earth, the sky, the rain, the people walking beside you. You are already part of everything. That is interbeing. And it is not something you have to earn. It is what you are. Once you recognize that you are not separate, that your life breathes through others and theirs through you, the question shifts from who am I to how am I showing up now? The truth of interbeing brings your attention fully to this moment, not to escape the world, but to fully join it, not to control it, but to meet it as it is. When you live from the understanding that everything is connected, your presence becomes more than awareness, it becomes alignment. This is where mindfulness becomes more than a tool. It becomes a path into harmony with the universe itself. Not because the universe demands something specific from you, but because when you are fully present, you naturally move in tune with it. The more aware you become, the more sensitive you are to the intelligence that flows through all things. You stop living by habit. You begin living by direct contact with life. Mindfulness of the present is not passive watching. It is active participation. It means paying full attention to what is here without the filters of past or future. You stop relating to now as a means to something else. You stop turning each moment into a stepping stone to the next. You arrive. And in that arrival, something profound opens up. Clarity. This clarity is not a thought, it is a direct seeing. You begin to understand without needing to analyze. You sense what needs to be done without calculating. You say the right thing without rehearsing. Not because you're perfect, but because you're in rhythm with the reality unfolding before you. You trust your steps because they come not from anxious thinking, but from grounded presence. This is what it means to be aligned not with your plans or expectations, but with the deeper movement of life itself. The moment you release your grip on how things should be and return to how they are, you open the doorway to flow. And flow is not random, it is intelligent, it carries within it the balance of all things. Mindfulness is the key that unlocks this balance. When you are mindful, you stop adding extra layers of resistance. You stop feeding the inner noise. You begin to witness your thoughts without becoming them. You feel emotions without being ruled by them. You make space for what's here, and in doing so, you make space for insight. Insight arises not from effort, but from stillness. When your attention is rooted in the present, you become more available to truth. You notice subtle patterns. You hear what is usually drowned out. You respond instead of reacting. This does not mean life becomes easy. It means you are no longer lost in confusion when it becomes hard. The universe is always moving toward balance, even when it appears chaotic. And when you meet it with full awareness, you align with that balancing force. Your presence becomes part of that healing current. You don't need to understand the whole picture. You need to stay close to what is true right now. This is why mindfulness is not a retreat from life. It is a full entry into it. When you are truly present, you stop operating from a fixed identity. You are no longer defending the past or fearing the future. You are available to life as it arises. And that availability is power, not the kind that dominates, but the kind that cooperates, that listens, that adapts. Mindfulness also shifts the way you relate to time. The future stops being a source of constant anxiety. The past stops being a weight you carry. You realize that the only place where life can actually be touched is here. Plans may still be made, but they are not clung to. Memories may still arise, but they are not mistaken for reality. You begin to live with one foot fully planted in the ground beneath you. And in that groundedness, there is peace. Not because everything is resolved, but because you are no longer scattered. Your energy is no longer split across timelines. You are here, and because of that, you can act clearly, speak honestly, listen fully. You become trustworthy not just to others, but to yourself. Because you are no longer being pulled in 1,000 directions, this integrity is what brings depth to your presence. When you are mindful, you are not pretending to be calm, you are rooted in calm. You are not acting thoughtful, you are actually thinking with care. You are not managing impressions, you are living from truth. That alignment is felt. Others sense it. The world responds to it. This is where trust in universal intelligence deepens. Because the more you live in the present, the more you notice that you are not guiding everything on your own. Some moments unfold with perfect timing, even without your control. Some answers arrive when you stop trying to force them. Some doors open when you pause long enough to see them. These are not coincidences. They are the natural result of living in alignment with the present. When you're mindful, life feels less like something to figure out and more like something to participate in. You begin to sense that every moment is offering something, not just pleasure or pain, but teaching, direction, an invitation to come closer to the center of your own awareness. The more present you are, the more clearly you hear that invitation. Even in discomfort, presence helps you stay grounded. You stop needing to fix everything right away. You stay with the feeling. You allow it to teach you, to move through you, to soften you. This kind of patience is powerful. It's not passive, it's transformative. It changes your nervous system. It retrains your mind. It teaches your heart how to open in the middle of uncertainty. When you're truly present, you don't need to perform. You are enough as you are. This releases so much inner tension. You don't have to constantly seek validation. You don't have to chase meaning. Meaning begins to arise naturally from the quality of your attention. Even simple acts of breath, a step, a kind word become meaningful when they are given your full awareness. And that awareness is contagious. When others are with you, they feel invited to slow down, to drop their masks, to be more real. Presence has that effect. It's not loud, it doesn't demand. But it changes the space. It reminds people of their own truth, of what matters, of the peace they've been too busy to feel. This is why mindfulness is more than self-help. It is service. It is how you contribute to the sanity of the world. In a culture obsessed with speed, your stillness becomes a form of rebellion. In a world driven by distraction, your attention becomes medicine. When you are here, truly here, you become a mirror for others to see themselves more clearly. Mindfulness also teaches you to let go of the need for control. You see that the more you cling, the more you suffer. But when you soften, life begins to support you in unexpected ways. This doesn't mean everything goes your way. It means you stop needing it to. You trust that even when plans fail, presence remains. That even when outcomes shift, your ability to respond does not. And in this way, mindfulness becomes your foundation, not a tool to reach for only in crisis, but a way of moving through every moment. You eat with attention. You speak with care. You listen without rushing to fix. You rest without guilt. You walk without needing to arrive. Each moment becomes complete, not because it's perfect, but because you are in it fully. This full presence transforms your inner landscape. Your thoughts begin to slow. Your emotions become less overwhelming. Your body feels more at ease. You begin to recognize the signs of disconnection and return before the spiral deepens. You build resilience not by hardening, but by staying soft in a clear way. Mindfulness is not about achieving some permanent state of peace. It's about returning again and again. Each breath is a return. Each pause is a homecoming. You stop needing to escape yourself. You begin to enjoy being with yourself, not because you are free of flaws, but because you are free of judgment. This self-acceptance is one of the deepest gifts of presence. When you're mindful, you don't edit yourself. You observe. You learn. You grow. Without shame, without comparison, without needing to be anywhere else. This creates an inner freedom that no external success can provide. And the more you live from that freedom, the more aligned your outer life becomes. You choose differently. You speak more truthfully. You spend your energy more wisely. You say no when needed. You say yes with your whole being. Your actions become clearer because they are rooted in this moment, not tangled in past wounds or future fears. Mindfulness of the present is how you join the natural intelligence of the universe. It is not mystical, it is deeply real. It is how trees grow, how rivers flow, how hearts beat. When you stop resisting what is here, you start moving in the same rhythm. And that rhythm carries you forward, not always where you planned, but always where you need to go. The universe does not speak in words, it speaks in moments. It speaks through feeling, through timing, through synchronicity, through the subtle shift that happens when you stop striving and start listening. Presence is how you hear it, and trust is what grows when you do. This trust is not blind, it is not passive, it is earned, breath by breath, through your willingness to show up now, not to get somewhere, but to be fully where you are. And in that being, everything changes. You don't have to understand the entire universe. You only need to be present for one breath. And from that breath, take one step. Fully here, fully alive, fully aligned. When you begin to live fully in the present, something unexpected starts to happen. Logic loses its tight grip. You no longer need everything to make sense in the old linear way. the heart begins to guide where the mind used to rule. A different kind of knowing starts to surface, one that can't be mapped or measured. And in that space, where clarity comes not from reason but from experience, trust takes root in a new way. A trust that isn't explained, a trust that is. This is where Zen points, not to answers, but to openings. Zen doesn't explain the world, it opens you to it. It doesn't offer step-by-step instructions. It throws you directly into what is and strips away the need to explain. And at the center of Zen's method are koans, those strange, poetic, sometimes shocking questions or statements that refuse to be solved by logic and demand to be lived instead. Koans aren't riddles, they're not puzzles to outsmart. They are tools meant to dislodge you from the trap of intellectual certainty. They are sharp enough to cut through concepts and gentle enough to return you to presence. A koan doesn't ask you to think harder, it asks you to let go, to feel, to become so present that the barrier between thinker and thought disappears. One of the most well-known koans is deceptively simple. What is the sound of one hand clapping? The mind rushes to solve it. It searches for answers, comparisons, ideas. But every attempt to explain it falls flat. That's the point. It's not designed to be understood in the usual way. It's meant to frustrate the logical mind so completely that it finally surrenders, and in that surrender, something deeper wakes up. Koans work like a mirror. They reflect your mental habits back at you. They show how quickly you try to fix, grasp, explain. And when those strategies fail, they bring you face to face with the raw experience underneath. This moment, this breath, this not knowing. And when you stop running from that space, you find something surprising clarity that doesn't come from figuring out, but from dropping in. Trust begins there, not in solving, but in allowing, not in certainty, but in direct contact with experience. Koans train you to live in paradox, not to escape contradiction, but to see through it. You stop needing life to fit into neat categories. You start to feel at home in mystery. And that's where real wisdom grows. A traditional koan might ask, without thinking of good or bad, who are you? At first, the mind freezes. It wants to analyze. It wants to reach for memory, for identity, for opinion. But the question pushes past those layers. Who are you when all the labels fall away? Not what do you believe? What do you know in your bones when thought is silent? This kind of questioning is not comfortable. It pulls the rug out from under your usual sense of self. But that's exactly what makes it powerful. Koans don't aim to make you feel safe. They aim to wake you up. And once you're awake, you begin to see that safety isn't found in having all the answers. It's found in learning to live deeply with the questions. Zen trusts the process. It doesn't rush. It doesn't explain the path. It gives you a koan, then waits for you to grow into it. The breakthrough never comes from force. It comes when resistance drops. When you stop trying to master the question and let the question dissolve the illusion of mastery. This mirrors life itself. Life is filled with events that defy logic, loss that doesn't make sense, joy that comes without reason, coincidences that speak louder than facts. Trying to control these things with logic only creates more tension. But when you begin to meet life, the way you meet a koan, curious, present, undefended, you start to feel a different kind of intelligence moving through everything. Koans also teach you to listen in a new way, not for information, but for resonance. You begin to feel when something is real, even if it can't be explained. You trust your inner response more than the outer structure. You start to live from the body, from the breath, from the gut, not as a rejection of thinking, but as a return to wholeness. In Zen practice, it's common to sit with a single koan for months, even years, not to arrive at a tidy conclusion, but to let the koan slowly dismantle your false beliefs. The longer you sit with it, the more you see your mind's patterns, the need to be right, the fear of silence, the craving for control, and slowly, those patterns soften. This is how koans dissolve mental resistance. They don't argue with your ego, they make it irrelevant. They point to what cannot be named, only known. And in that knowing, you find something unshakable, no a concept, but a felt experience of truth, something stable beneath all the noise. When trust is rooted in logic, it crumbles under mystery. But when trust is rooted in presence, it thrives in the unknown. Koans prepare you for this. They teach you how to live without resolution, how to meet paradox with open hands, how to be still in the face of contradiction, not to escape the tension, but to rest inside it. This kind of spiritual training doesn't make you passive. It sharpens your awareness. It refines your ability to see what is real and to drop what is not. It teaches you how to move without needing constant reassurance. Because you no longer rely on external validation, you trust the depth you've touched within yourself. This trust becomes practical. It affects how you speak, how you decide, how you relate. You stop over-explaining. You speak from clarity. You act from alignment, even if others don't understand. You are no longer living to be understood. You are living from a place that understands. Zen calls this not knowing mind. It's not ignorance, it's openness. It's the willingness to admit, I don't know, and to remain steady there. Not knowing mind doesn't mean you give up on truth. It means you stop pretending to own it. You let it reveal itself in its own time, in its own way. And when it does, it's not something you can explain to others. It's something you become. This is why Zen is often quiet. It doesn't need to prove. It doesn't need to convert. It trusts that silence speaks, that presence teaches. That paradox contains its own kind of answer, not one that satisfies the intellect, but one that calms the soul. Koans train you to stop searching for life in thoughts and to start living it fully, here and now. They prepare you for the moments that can't be explained, only felt. The kind of moments where words fall short but meaning is everywhere. The kind of moments where your only task is to be fully present and let life unfold through you. This kind of presence requires courage, the courage to stop needing certainty, the courage to rest in discomfort, the courage to say, this doesn't make sense, but I trust it. Koans build that courage, one paradox at a time. In everyday life, this shows up as greater calm. You stop rushing to fix things that aren't broken. You stop needing to resolve every conversation. You allow tension to exist without making it wrong. You let life be messy without losing your center. And that centeredness becomes a gift to yourself and to everyone around you. Over time, koan practice becomes more than meditation. It becomes your way of meeting the world. Every experience becomes a kind of koan. How do you respond to change without clinging? How do you love without needing possession? How do you act wisely in a world that makes no promises? You don't answer these with words. You answer with your life. And in that answer, trust deepens not as a belief, but as a natural state. You stop waiting to feel safe and start knowing you are already supported. Not by logic, but by presence. Not by certainty, but by alignment with what is. Koans don't take you away from life. They take you deeper into it. They don't teach you what to think. They show you how to see. And once you see, you don't need to understand everything. You need only to live it, one breath at a time, with both feet on the ground and your heart wide open. This is the power of Zen. This is the power of the question that can't be answered, and the trust that grows when you stop needing one. The more you allow paradox to soften your thinking, the more you start to feel at ease inside what used to confuse you. you no longer need everything to fit neatly together. You stop expecting life to follow your timelines. You begin to see that truth doesn't always arrive in answers. Sometimes it arrives in the quiet acceptance that there is no answer, at least not yet. And from this space, a new possibility emerges, not just surviving uncertainty, but learning from it, trusting it, even walking with it as a guide. Buddhism never promised certainty. It doesn't pretend to erase the unknown. Instead, it meets it directly and calls it part of the path. It names impermanence as truth. It teaches that nothing is fixed, not your thoughts, not your feelings, not your circumstances. And instead of resisting this, it invites you to lean in, to see that the very thing the mind fears, the shifting, the unraveling, the unpredictability, is not a problem to solve, but a truth to understand. This understanding begins with acceptance, not the kind that gives up, but the kind that sees clearly. Uncertainty is not a mistake in the design. It is the nature of all things. When you accept that, you stop trying to force life into shape. You stop waiting for a perfect plan. You begin to live in a deeper rhythm that listens more than it demands. Uncertainty brings discomfort because the mind craves control. It wants to know what's next. It wants to protect itself with stories and expectations. But life doesn't follow those scripts. And when reality contradicts the plan, suffering begins. Buddhism shows that this suffering comes not from the unknown itself, but from our resistance to it. When you loosen that resistance, fear begins to fade. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop gripping. You still make choices. You still set intentions. But you do so with openness, with the understanding that outcomes are not yours to dictate. That effort matters, but control is an illusion. You begin to move with life instead of pushing against it. This shift changes how you experience anxiety. When uncertainty no longer feels like a threat, your nervous system begins to relax. You start to see the mind's spirals not as truth, but as habitual reactions. You learn to pause, to feel the discomfort without feeding the panic, to stay present with the space between what is and what will be. Staying present in uncertainty is a form of deep trust, not in a specific outcome, but in your ability to meet what comes, in your inner capacity to respond, to adjust, to begin again. This is what the Buddha pointed to again and again, not the end of change, but the end of clinging. That's where freedom lives. Not in getting what you want, but in no longer needing to know what's next in order to be at peace. Uncertainty also opens you to creativity.